We're live. We're live. We are live.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Come on in to another Lunch and Learn. We want you to tell us where you're joining us from. We want you to contribute to the conversation in the chats where you are. And we want you to keep it real, practical, and informative as you have your lunch. We are here today talking about a topic that is related to workplace culture and creating a positive workplace culture and how culture has changed for the future. Joining me today is Dr. Janice Brooks, and she is a strategist, and she's also a counselor, and she's a trained temperament coach. And all the strategies that you need, she's able to give it to you if you just touch her. She is also with the John Maxwell team of coaches, leaders, and counselors. And then we have with us also Dr. Howell, who is a master coach, relationship coach, and also a life strategist as he moves through to help especially men navigate their relationships at all levels. And I am yours truly, Dr. Marcio, and I am a Christian, certified Christian leadership and life coach, and also a trainer and consultant. We want to look at what is an organizational culture. And we want to start with Dr. Howell. What would you say is an organizational culture?
To me, an organizational culture are the shared values, the beliefs, the attitudes, the expectations, and the norms that shape the environment or the organization. There can be things as simple as the dress code, the amount of hours of work, the workplace environment, communication style, the rituals, the styles, and the way people interact. But one of the best ways for me to really talk about the work culture is if you look at the differences between Walmart and Kmart. They sold basically the same thing, yet one shut down and one kept going. And one of the main reasons for that is because the Walmart work culture, they had one simple premise, which was this: always let your customers know that you're close by. So whenever you're within 10 to 20 feet of a customer, say, hi, can I help you? Whenever a customer comes into the door, hi, how you doing? Have a great day. Kmart did not adopt that policy. And so people did not feel like they were welcome as much. And so because of that work culture, Walmart survived, Kmart didn't. If you jump to the fast food organization, you look at Chick-fil-A versus all the other fast food restaurants, you will see that Chick-fil-A before the pandemic, they had a very happy-go-lucky, chipper, and very courteous set of individuals that greeted you and took your order and gave you your order. Now, after the pandemic, things have changed a little bit. My wife and I have always talked about how they're not as kind, as courteous as they used to be. But people know what your culture is. And the customer goes not just for the product, but for the culture, because that culture can relate to the feeling that that customer has when they walk through those doors and the type of services that they get.
Powerful two examples. And that is the face of culture. Culture by itself is the norms and beliefs and how our organization represents itself and how people experience your organization. And so it is very important that you make people feel that they are valued and loved. I love those two examples. They were very good examples and they were also insightful. Let me go to Dr. Brooks. What would you describe organization culture as?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Marcia. So, for me, when I think about work culture, actually thinking about people working together for a common good. I would define it as the ways in which people in a company or in a business, and how they carry out their work, their attitudes, their belief, and the way they behave and the things that they do. And I say this because many times we have gone into different organizations and we would hear people say, or someone say, this is the way we do things around here. And that is actually referring to the work culture. And sometimes connected to that saying is not a positive thing. It's a negative thing. What they say, this is how we do things around here. So right there and then you realize that that culture is something is wrong right there if that's how you do things around here. And so work cultures can be both positive and negative. They can be both stated or like written in the company's policies, vision, mission, procedures, whatever it is, as well as it can be just something that is a desired culture. So somebody just do as they desire. And that is where the challenge is at times, when it's not a real stated culture and everybody's doing things how they want to do it. So that's how I look at it, Dr. Marcia.
Very good point. And myself feel and have, well, I have learned when I was doing organizational culture in schools going up to college, that there is a formal and an informal structure. And that is what you alluded to. And that is what Dr. Howell also alluded to, that the formal structure is what the company puts as its face card, what it really believes in, and what it attempts to carry out. But the informal culture is what really happens on the ground. And that's what I think you're referring to, where people of common mind and common disgruntlement or common satisfaction appoint a leader from among them, other than the CEO himself, who they look to for and take cues from in a company to actually drive your company or break your company. And they are the ones that we must pay attention to when we seek to establish a positive work culture for the future. And so the next question would be, what are the ways in which our society and work culture has evolved? And there are so many ways after COVID that we have evolved that has impacted the workplace and has pushed an agenda of leading with empathy, leading with kindness, and leading with dignity. And so we want to look at technology, for example. Technology has affected the workplace in such a way that companies have to now look at having their employees learn on the job the skills that they need technologically to equip them for the change, the ever changing culture of a technological society, and the expectations of being online and of being driven to serve your customers wherever they are in the world. And then there is the next side of it, where it has evolved into more companies understanding the importance of mental health and emotional intelligence and how that affects the persons who they employ and what they need to do to help them. Now, there is also this flexi issue at the workplace where persons are now hybrid or so on and have to share their time between their work and their life. So sometimes they go in 3 times out of the week, and then the other 2 days they are able to work from home. This is affecting how we view the workplace and how we account for remote dispensations in relation to how that affects our organization. And we also have to look at another issue that seems to affect our workplace, and that is the work-life balance, which is beginning to be a topic that is out there, and having persons developing a growth mindset and being more flexible and adaptable. That is how the workplace has changed. And continuous learning has also now affected workplace, where workplace owners are now embracing a learn on the job. And that is, to me, the evolution of a workplace that make us now have to rethink how we image and how we treat our workers and how we allow them to manage their work. Can you add anything to that, Dr. Brooks?
That's some great points that you have made right there, Dr. Marcia. And I thank you for those points. And when I think about what you have said, I think specifically about how the different work cultures or even the current work
Okay.
cultures impact workers. And whether we know it or not, in whatever area we are in, the greatest asset to any company is their employees. And until we get to the point where we realize that the employee is the greatest asset, because without the employee, sometimes person will say it's the customer, but without the employee, there's no one to serve the customer. And current work cultures has a significant impact on workers in many ways. Dr. Marcia, you mentioned technology, you mentioned some other things, but particularly after COVID-19. And because we all know that before the pandemic, there was just a small percentage of people, particularly the work from home kind of culture. There was a small amount of people working from home in those times. And we know that the pandemic has changed a lot of that. So many organizations now, most of them or many of them were not prepared for or have some kind of strategic plan in place to create or incorporate a work from home space or culture into what they had before. Hence, many of them are actually still, after 2 years or a year and a half or whatever time they counted that COVID has stopped, are still trying to define what the culture should look like at this time, working from home, and incorporating with those working from out of the office. And this has significantly impacted workers. And I want to say more negatively than positive, whether you agree with me or not, or whether the persons agree with me or not. Sometimes more positive, more negatively than positively. Because every organization culture should support and advance the company's goals and strategies, and therefore everyone should feel a part of the culture. And when they do, they are able to cultivate that culture in a better way. So, to sum up that impact, and what you talked about earlier, Dr. Marcia, work cultures that are negative can impact workers, their happiness, their engagement, their mindset, their satisfaction, and ultimately their productivity and level of performance, resulting in things happening like, many workers now have quiet quitted their job. They come to work every day because they just want to get a salary to take care of their children and their household, but they are really not there mentally. And many others are having mental issues. They are suffering from burnt out, and just to name a few. So these are some of the things that has impacted the actual culture at work. And we do know that a positive work culture enhances the workers' sense of belonging, make them feel more fulfilled. They have this kind of loyalty to the company, and they are better performers when there is a positive and a good work culture. And so that is my addition as to how work culture can impact the workers in the workplace. And I want to state it again, that whether we know it or not, our workers, our employees are the most valued asset to any organization. Therefore, as leaders, we have to also help, and as trainers and as coaches and as consultants, when we are in these organizations and helping them to shape that organization culture, we have to make sure that that is at the top of the list.
Very much so. And some of us as employers and employees, because all of us here has either been on the side of the employee or on the side of the employer. And we know the impact that these types of behaviors and cultures and attitudes, formal or informal institutions, can have on us. Because a lot of persons in their jobs, the workplace in itself, even as it exists now, the current workplace makes them feel undervalued and feel that they are not able to perform at their fullest potential. And some of them are leaving the job also because of the freedom that they now have to navigate their own space as entrepreneurs. And there are some persons too who are just tired with the fact that they are bullied by the standards and policies that are set in stone because their workplace is not so adaptable. And so that in itself create a problem for both employers and employees. So my question to you then, Dr. Howell, is how should and how does the work cultures and values align with this change in societal expectations? How do these values that they are at work and the cultures that are embedded in some workplace, how do they align to societal change in societal values and expectations? How would you say they are changing?
Well, before I attack that problem, the first thing I want to talk about is some of the things that Dr. Janice spoke on. She talked about quiet quitting. And that to me is a very powerful statement because a lot of research has gone into that, and they found that after COVID, a lot of people were quiet quitting. That means they were doing just enough to get by with and staying under the radar so they wouldn't get fired. But that brings me to a point that I like to talk about sometimes, which is systems thinking. So if you take a typical organization, and now I'll use a school for this particular analogy. Let's say you have a high school. The administration is a culture. They have their own system of doing things. And then you have each department. Let's say you have the English department. They have their own systems, way of thinking, or their own individual culture. The math department, they have their own culture. And then you have the PE, and then you have the science, and then you have all of these different teachers that have their own individual cultures. And then somehow these cultures have to come together to work as an individual, to work as one company. But you also have to understand, not only are you dealing with all these microcultures, each individual teacher also has their own system or culture that they're dealing with their family and friends externally. So there are a lot of things that go into whether or not a company is going to work properly. And so it creates a situation where you look at it to see what can I do to fix these problems. So if you look at the expectations that the society puts on the work culture, it can contribute negatively to the organization. So if people aren't aligned with the company, if people don't feel empowered, if people do not feel like they have a say, then that will in turn relate to how they treat their customers. There's research that says that your employees will treat the customers the way the leaders treat them. So if you're not treating your subordinates well, that would transfer over to your customers. And I was reading something yesterday, and there was this guy who made a grocery store, and he said that he looked at every customer that walked through his doors as $50,000. He said if they spend $100 a week shopping at my store, and they do that for 50 weeks out of the year, and you multiply that by 10 years living in that neighborhood, that is $50,000. And so if we stop looking at customers as just a paycheck and look at them as how can I create the maximum amount of service to this customer so that they can be repeat customers, you're taking away the inanimate idea of what a customer is and replacing them with a person. And so if you don't treat your customers properly, it's going to have a negative effect. But the leaders must first treat their subordinates properly. But might I go one step further? Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, he stated that the first thing you need to do is to get the right people on the bus. A lot of times leaders are so quick to fill a slot because there's an opening there. And Jim Collins, he says, no, you wait to find the right person to put on that bus because it's easier to train someone who has the right mindset than it is to get rid of a person once you hired the wrong person, especially in America with lawsuits and everything else. And so you need to know what type of mindset, what type of values does your company stand for, and then look and you qualify people based on their values, based on their standards, based on their mindset, not based on their qualifications, because qualifications might mean that they are stubborn in their way of doing things. Almost anybody's trainable if you have the right mindset. And so Jim Collins says, get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus. Mm-hmm. And so to continue, to finish up this question really fast, if you focus on the diversity, equity, inclusion, and making sure that you have the right people on the bus, you will find that your system or your employees are more flexible. They're more willing to do what is required. They're more willing to move above and beyond what they were currently doing because they feel like they are part of the organization. And that's how you maintain wellness within your organization. That's how you reduce burnout. That's how you make sure that you reduce mental health concerns because people don't feel like they have an opportunity to grow, improve, and be heard.
I love so many golden nuggets there. I love many of the points. And I am for, if a culture needs to be positive, employers must get the right persons on that bus and get the wrong persons off the bus. I totally agree with that. And also, the organization must have persons at the top and throughout the organization that understands image and the message that the organization upholds so that they can feel the customers can be treated and they can also feel that it is very important. Money is not enough to keep workers in your organization. You must understand how they are thinking.
Dr. Marcia seems to be having a break in her phone, in her internet already. It seems as if Dr. Marcia is having a break in her internet while we're waiting for that to come back online. We are talking today about creating and sustaining a positive work culture. And we cannot really talk about positive unless we also talk about negative, because we would not know positive unless we know negative. One is opposite of the other. And when we know what a positive work, a negative work culture is, that is when we will know how to form a positive one. So let me just add while we're waiting for Dr. Marcia to come back on stream here, uh, how we can actually address the potential challenges of employee burnout and mental health in a digitally connected world. How can we address that? Because earlier I talked about one of the things that impact workers in the workplace was burnout. And how can we really address that? I want to just use one answer and incorporate everything in this one answer, is to get rid of any form of toxic work culture. Get rid of any form of toxic work culture. That is how we rid the workplace of potential challenges of burnout and mental health. Any kind of toxic work culture is not good for workers. And therefore, we must work towards a culture of fairness, a culture of inclusion, a place where leadership uses empathy and they put themselves in the place of the workers. There are many persons leading organizations that do not care about their workers. All they care about is the bottom line. And so leaders must put themselves in the place of the workers if they want to address the potential challenges of employee burnout and mental health in this digital space. They must have clear and they must have honest communication. There must be equity and there must be equality. They must train and they must also have better kind of benefits and pay structure for their workers. Earlier, I talked about the pandemic. And regardless of the challenges that were posed by the pandemic, talent needs to be nurtured and valued in every organization. And so leaders and their companies and their businesses, they have to move past we're here to get the work done, because I've passed through organization where leaders will say we just need to get the work done. It cannot be just need to get the work done. They also have to keep their employees' concerns at the top of their mind. I remember, and let me just say this, Dr. Marcia, thank you for getting back on. I'm happy you're back here. But let me just say this. Many years ago, I don't know if it's still on the television. I hardly watch television these days. There was a popular series on own television, and it was called Undercover Boss. And this is where leaders went into the different branches of their companies, and they would spend days there, just watching how the workers work and, incorporating themselves in the company. They would spend days on the ground with workers. And it was one of the most emotional series I have watched over time, because there were times when they call them bosses, and they were really leaders, and some of them were owners of the company, saw the actual work culture staring them in their face. I remember many of them cried and broke down. Some were even angry at how the workers acted with the customers. There was fear. There was, some of them empathized when they saw what the real work culture was. And so this has caused some shift in some work cultures, just seeing it. Leaders were able to go out on the ground and see it. But I saw this publication from SHRM that was done in 2019. And it talked about the high cost of toxic workplace culture. But two of the most revealing things that I saw in this publication, it said that 97% of executives, and executives are leaders, agree that their actions have a direct impact on the workplace culture. Their action. So it means that if you go into a workplace and the culture is rotten, the culture is bad, then you first have to realize that it is a direct representation of the leadership of that workplace. So this is what I wanted to really add to that one that says, how does the current workplace culture address the potential challenges of workplace burnout? So it has to start from at the top. Thank you, Dr. Marcy.
And it does. Thank you so much, Dr. Janice. This thing called technology. Mental health does start with the mindset, and it starts with the mindset of how we deliver our services or expect persons to deliver the services in our workplace. And so I look at what Dr. Brooks has said, and if it is toxic, it means that sometimes how we engage persons in our workplace and how we give them feedback can also contribute to a negative culture in our workplace. Persons must feel supported when they are receiving feedback rather than attacked. Let me hear what you have to say, Dr. Howell, on how workplaces and the roles that employee feedback and engagement plays in creating a work culture that is positive.
Well, thank you very much for including me in this. I'm enjoying this topic. I thought, I didn't think I would have as much fun as I'm actually having with this topic, but I'm actually enjoying it because it brought up a lot of stuff that I learned about in school and that I was able to publish in one of the books that I wrote. And so one of the topics that I find very important is appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry talks about everyone having a part to play in the company. Everyone has a voice. And so one of the most integral things that a company can do is to have a policy that incorporates feedback from everyone. You should have representations from all facets of the company at the table to make sure you get a good opinion. For example, when I was in high school, the janitors always knew the pulse of what was going on in the school. And so anytime you have a meeting, if you don't get a janitor involved in the process, you're losing valuable data and information because nobody stops talking when the janitor is walking through. And so they hear a lot of things, they see a lot of things, and so they are actually involved in the heartbeat of the company. They have a better representation than the teachers or than the administration because they go through all the different rooms. And so they cut across a lot of different systems or a lot of different cultures. They go to the math room, chemistry room, science room, English room. They go into the principal's office. They go into the gym. They're outside where the students are getting ready to go home or coming in. And so they hear so many different ideas that if you bring them to the table, you will get a wealth of understanding. And so feedback is so important because whenever employees don't feel like they have a voice, it creates burnout. Another thing that feedback is important for is if you want to cater to the needs of your employees, you need to know what their dreams and aspirations are. So leaders need to know what the dreams, aspirations, and beliefs of their employees are so that they can cater towards them. They can give them mentorship, leadership roles. You can give them additional learning, the ability to grow and become better at their professions. And so to me, without feedback and without engagement, you will have things like undervalued employees and that quiet quitting that Dr. Janice was talking about. You will have skepticism. When the leaders say something, the employees aren't going to believe it because you haven't followed through on things, or the things that you're following through on does not impact the employees like it impacts you. So, for example, you hear a lot about this executive got a $1, $2, $3, or $5 million bonus this year when you're laying off 400 or 500 people, on the lower levels. And so there's a disconnect, and it creates a culture of exclusivism where the administrators or the leadership committees or the leadership culture, they get their bonuses, and everyone else down at the bottom gets that trickle down effect like Ronald Reagan used to talk about. It's trickling versus running. It's running for the executives, but it's trickling for the lower people. And whenever they feel like their salaries aren't going up as fast as the people above them, then there's always going to be some disgruntled type things. But some of the things you can do to take care of that are create anonymous surveys. Right? So you can use stuff like SurveyMonkey, where you can ask questions and get positive feedback. You can get focus groups from all facets of the company, open door policies, core worker mentoring, so you can get a good understanding of what people are saying, and then you can keep track of how your company is growing. Because if you do not understand how your company is being run, then you can be like what Dr. Janice was talking about, where those leaders came in and saw that, oh my goodness, my company and my employees aren't running the way that they should be. I'm making all this money, but these people aren't happy. And so you have to look at that to make sure that everyone has a part to play in the voice of the company.
Powerful points raised by everyone, and the message that I think that we must never lose sight of in building a positive work culture in our current trending, changing, uncertain society, work society, and work culture is that we must value persons and their input, because everybody is important in the company and everybody has a share. Because the moment you create a negative culture where there is exclusion at any level, then your company runs the risk of losing out and not being exclusive and not remaining as a constant. The competition becomes more intense for you because you now give them a choice and an option to give their potential to someone else or to use it somewhere else. And so you are at a great loss if you do not cultivate a positive work culture. Feedback and engagement seems to be the second most important item when you are thinking of creating a positive work culture based on our discussion here. What do we mean by feedback and engagement? We are saying that feedback is what you receive from those who are doing the actual work, and feedback is what you must give to those who you want to do your work, because owners, CEO, and executives and trainers and consultants who are owners of companies have a vision that they have to communicate to others, and they have to understand your why and buy into your vision for them to become a valued member or feel that they're a valued member of that organization. And so feedback is a two-way street that is extremely valuable and is a treasure for growth and development in an organization and for generating a positive work culture. Thank you so much, Dr. Howell. The next thing about engagement is that we must meet people where they are and we must be very flexible to their needs. And what is also important in creating a positive work culture is the issue of time off. We must be very prudent with how we give time off. And I would want to say from the employee's side, you must take your time off. If those are embedded into the system and the culture of your workplace, there are some persons who want you to give them a medal and a crown and put them in the Guinness Book of Records because they have 56 days. And for the 12 years that they have worked, they tell you very boastfully that they have not taken one. That's not a plus for you. Everybody needs to rejuvenate and everybody needs to recalibrate and everybody needs to take some time off to think and to reassess where you are sitting or standing in your company, because some of us get very comfortable where we are because our jobs are paying our bills, but that is not really where we should be. Another thing that I would really encourage is continuous learning. We must create programs in our organizations where people learn something new every day. In some cultures, we set aside a day that is called a study group day, or we call it a workers' day, or we call it an inventory day. There are different names that people call it, where they meet with their team and they have them let down their hair a little and play and talk about their concerns, their needs, and their stressors in a very comfortable setting. And some people go further to treat these employees to give them stuff that they would like to eat and let them play games and so on while demonstrating these things. Those are some of the ways we continue contribute to a positive work culture. One of the things too is that we must learn to accommodate the changes in our co-workers' lives, because sometimes there is grief or death and the co-worker says, I just want to have some more hours so I can work off my grief. We must become, our workplace must become places like that where we cater to the real needs of our employers. It's not a stress, it's not even a stretch. If the person says, for example, I want to work 5 extra hours. You don't have to pay me. I can't see the harm in allowing the person to work through his or her grief in that way. And then also, we want to have seminars and webinars that they can look at very comfortably in their homes that are practical and that teaches them a new skill. And I don't want to be the one who ends this program. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Brooks, to give me your last words and add to the conversation of how we can actually contribute to a positive work culture wherever we are as an employee or as an employer.
Thank you for that, Dr. Marcia. I will be very short with this one. Value people, and use things. This is a word to employers. Value people and use things. And this has been reversed over time to organizations and employers valuing things and using people. And so we have to, as employers, get back to the place where we change the narrative to what it is supposed to be. And on the side of the employee, you also have a contributing factor in that. You have to be able to speak your truth, but speak it in a way where they understand that you are not here to be used. You're here to add value to the organization, and that is what you expect in the end. So it's a halfway meeting of the both minds, the employer and that of the employee.
Yes. Dr. Harrell, could we have your final points?
Oh, I agree with everything that's been said so far. Employers do your part, employees do your part. But the most important thing is if you get the right people on the bus, it will create a climate that forces those who are agitators to want to get off of the bus. You create a positive environment where negativity cannot flourish. Those negative people will leave one by one until you get the company that you need, because people are attracted to certain types of companies. And so if they're not comfortable in a positive environment, they'll get out. And you don't even
Ah,
have to keep them out.
very good, solid points to end on. And I just want to, what can I add? Because I just love get the right persons on that bus and get the wrong ones off. I just love you are of value. I just love, oh my Lord, value people and not things. And so I would maybe want to end by saying, treat people the way you want to be treated. Should the situation be reversed? If you're an employer, make sure that you treat people the way you would want to have been treated if you were an employee. And if you're an employee, give the respect to the employer that is what he or she deserves. So you would need to prioritize very well, and you would need to understand what is very important to you, what is important to the organization, and what and how you do what you do affects you because it affects the organization. A positive work culture starts with you, ends with you, and remains with you, because everywhere you go, you take yourself. If you are toxic here, you are toxic there. And if you are compliant here, you are compliant there. If you are cooperative here, you are cooperative there. And if you are excellent here, you are excellent there. We want to thank everyone that has listened in. Dr. Bruce, can you tell us where they have been listening from? Are there any questions that we need to wrap with or answer in
Um,
our chats?
no question, Dr. Marcia. Thank you.
Very much so. And so we are out of here another time until next week. We are your coaches, we are your trainers, we are your consultants, and we are your experience experts. Dr. Howell, master coach, relationship coach, specifically helping men to navigate their emotions personally and professionally. Our life strategist, Dr. Janice Brooks, who can give you every strategy that you need to overcome any issue you may have and to be able to manage your emotions and help others to manage their emotions in your organization. Also, a person from the John Maxwell team, and I am yours truly, Dr. Powell, life strategist, also as the Christian leadership coach and also a consultant and trainer. You can speak to any of us at any level on any topic and on any subject, personally and professionally. And we will help you in all the ways we can. And if we can't, we have people who can. So just join us next week again. We are out of here. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.